Buenas noches, familia. This is Ray Collazo, and you are listening and watching to the Found in Translation talk show, the talk show that stacks truth about politics and today's hottest issues. Thank you so much for joining us again. This is your Ray Collazo. Thank you so much for joining us. You may be watching this live on Facebook, Periscope. I know a lot of our special guests has a very big Twitter following, so for our Periscope Twitter fans, thank you so much for joining us. If you're new to the experience, this is your Ray Collazo, Found in Translation, was formerly the Ray's Latino Talk podcast from my old heads, and is the longest continually running independent Latino-led podcast that talks about politics and today's hottest issues from a diverse perspective. This is your Ray Collazo. You can continue to support the podcast by following us on our social media handles at FIT_talk show on Twitter and IG, and subscribe to the podcast. Anywhere you can download a podcast. You also can listen to the show on the radio in Philadelphia at WPPMLP 106.5 FM, hashtag People Powered Media. I'm actually at the WPPM studios, and there was a party that just ended for the 100th episode of the People Powered Radio Show here, which we're a part of with our executive producer, Vanessa Maria Graber. It is such an honor not only to do our 352nd episode in the midst of this historic time in our country, but one of our a new friend to the show, and someone who I think you're going to see a lot more here on Found in Translation Talk Show, activist, broadcaster, television producer, Lady D's in the building.
Yes.
Talk to us, Lady D. Say hello to the family.
Listen, hello, my people. I'm so excited to be here. Ray, I'm a big fan also of the work that you do, and congratulations on all of the success that you're having. I'm excited to join you and all of your viewers today. I'm excited for the good conversation.
All right, so if people don't know, there's people listening and watching us all over the country, all over the world. Let people know where you're from, because you're 100% Puerto Rican. You're from a very interesting part of the country, and there's a lot going on there, not only in the community, but also with your broadcast platforms.
Yeah, that's right. I am 100% Puerto Rican, Boricua pa que lo
Lady D is frozen. So Lady D, if you're frozen, my friend, there you go, Lady D. Talk to
I'm back.
Tell us about what you're doing in the Lehigh Valley, my friend.
Yeah, so born on the island of Puerto Rico, but raised right here in the small town of Allentown, Pennsylvania. I have been able to bless, I should say, the community with several platforms, such as on television and radio. I've been doing radio since the 90s, and it's always been a personal goal of mine to offer my platform to those in the community. So on my platforms, you will see us showcasing a lot of our local community activists, our leaders, our community leaders, different organizations, nonprofits, and profitable organizations that are doing good within the community. So I'm always happy to have good conversation and create a space for people to be able to grow and share different opinions. Lady
D, tell people about your radio program at Latin FM. I particularly enjoy your program that you do to inform the community and entertain them on Sunday mornings.
So I'll tell you very quickly the background. The radio station is called Latina FM, but my show is a hip hop and R&B genre English spoken show. The whole station is primarily Spanish. I also do Spanish radio on other shows there, but that is actually like a pioneer for the Valley. It's the first hip hop and R&B English high frequency radio station. So 92.1 FM in Allentown, Reading, Hazleton. I cover a lot of areas, and it's just been a great experience to be able to have that platform.
You know, Damaris, I don't know, shout out to Outer Space, the hip hop group, part of the Army of Pharaoh's crew. See, I don't know if you know this, my little brother, Mario Piazzo, is one of the MCs of that group, and they just came out with their newest single, Crowned Royal. So much respect to those guys. You got to check it out. Be like, damn, Ray got a funky brother there. So
I have to check that out.
Oh, you definitely got to check it out.
I love some Crown Royal too.
Well, Puerto Rican does it. That's kind of the cost of entry. And again, you're watching Lady D and Ray Collazo on Found Translation. In a moment, we're going to introduce our very special guest, a Latino activist who made us very proud during this presidential cycle in the midst of all this chaos and nonsense. There's people in our community, like our very special guest is about to come on, that's making us very proud, especially with the Puerto Rican community, and especially engaged in this Democratic presidential primary, gained some great, really advocated for us on some of the highest levels with these candidates. And later on the show, it's Valentine's Day Eve, Lady D. So we got to talk a little bit about love. So give people a little preview of what kind of topics we're going to get into, because really love in 2020 is a very fickle thing nowadays.
Love in 2020, that encompasses so much potential conversation. But we know that the evolution of marriage has changed, and it has a different, meaning right now in our lives in 2020. And so we'll be talking about that. I'm super excited to speak on that. And obviously we'll also be speaking about, all these independent women that have been rising up and choosing career over love, and how we're trying to manage that.
And do you have to choose? That's the question.
And do you have to choose?
And you have it
right.
That is really the question. So love is it impacts us on a lot of levels. And I know people are going to enjoy that conversation. Hopefully our special guest will stick around to talk a little bit about love. So, but we want to get in, we want to bring on our very special guest. He's actually been very gracious to come on a little early on the show so we could speak to him. Lady D, in the middle of all this drama, we went quickly from the fracaso of the Iowa caucus to the New Hampshire primary. That we had to go from white to whiter in terms of demographics, even though the Latino community was represented in both instances. And in the midst of all that, I started seeing media coverage of this young man that we're bringing on stage, that we're bringing onto the show, who not only was one of the most visible progressive activists engaging with all of the presidential candidates during the New Hampshire primary, but also kept the issues related to Puerto Rico and the Puerto Rican community visible throughout the Democratic primary in New Hampshire. So we want to bring onto the state, onto the Found Translation show, progressive activists and New Hampshire State Representative candidate, Carlos Cardona. Carlos, welcome to Found Translation, my man.
Bienvenido.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Gracias por tenerme en el show.
Let me tell you something, Carlos, and we're going to get into the show. First of all, I just want to say mil gracias, hermano, because you made us so proud, bro. Just seeing the media coverage and how you engaged all these candidates. We want to know that story and share with our Found Translation audience. But con Boricua and Latino leaders around the country, we're very proud of you, Carlos. So we wanted to bring you on the show to share your story. So why don't we start there, Carlos? How did a Puerto Rican que crió en Puerto Rico, un boricua 100%, get to New Hampshire? Let's just start there.
Right.
Share with us a little bit about your journey.
Well, it's a long one, but I'll try to make it a good one for you guys. So I was born in Aguadilla, Puerto Rico, in Campo Alegre, which is part of downtown area in Puerto Rico. And I want to thank you guys. It's an honor to be among so many great Puerto Ricans here like you guys. Like Lady D and yourself, Ray. It's a huge honor. So I was born in Aguadilla, Puerto Rico, and basically I grew up in what I call a shanty village, un cerro, and very poor, humble place. My grandfather, from a very, very young age, taught me how to be involved in politics and protesting, everything you can imagine, Puerto Rican style. And then at the age of 9 years old, my family moved to Buffalo, New York. I lived there for 2 years. My parents divorced and we moved back to the island, which it was a very chaotic time in my life. After that, we ended up in Aguas Buenas. My mom fell in love, talking about love. But that was a terrible experience. We were worse off. My mom experienced domestic violence. So I got that experience firsthand, what domestic violence looks like and what kind of man I didn't want to be when I grew up. So a good friend of my mom saw the situation she was in and reached out to her through Facebook and said, I would like to buy you a ticket, you and your kids, to move with me to Haverhill, Massachusetts. And my mom, without thinking twice, took the opportunity. So it was the best thing that could happen, because at that time I was realizing that I was gay, and I was coming to that conclusion. Well, nobody knew, but moving to Massachusetts was one of the most important things for me, because of course, Massachusetts being the LGBT Mecca that it is, basically, when we were up there, so we moved to Massachusetts. I went to school, became president of my class. And I thought I had the courage to come out and tell my family, so I did. And that, of course, didn't turn out very well. We as Puerto Rican, we still have long ways to go when it comes to learning to accept LGBTQ people. I do have to say this. My mom and I have an amazing relationship today. As a matter of fact, she's watching my newborn right now while I'm on the show with you guys. But at that time, it was a very troubling time in my life. My mom kicked me out of my house. My dad was in Puerto Rico, so I didn't have much communication with him at the time. So it was impossible for me to fly there. So some friends that I found on MySpace moved to New Hampshire, was at their house. And then basically after that, I found myself looking for a job and, of course, going to night school. And that's where politics started for me here in New Hampshire. I realized there was a huge loophole in the law. Basically, if you were on your own without your parents, you had to pay for your own education, even if you were underage. So to me, that was very troublesome to come up with $200 while you're 16 years of age with no place to live, barely any food, and having to work at McDonald's for minimum wage. And that was a huge lesson for me. So I did come up with the money and basically graduated night school. And as soon as I graduated night school, I went to a house party for back then Governor Jean Shaheen here in New Hampshire. And she heard about my story and she said, "This is insane. It shouldn't be happening in our state. If you are underage, you shouldn't have to pay for your own education." So basically we talked. She said, "You should run for office." So I did. I reached out to several parties. Unfortunately, the parties of the time didn't know me and didn't really understood where I was coming from. And I think they were a little bit nervous with the lack of name recognition in a very Republican city. So I said, you know what, screw it. I'm going to run as a write-in candidate and it'll be what it is. So I did. I ran as a write-in candidate and won by 46 votes, becoming the youngest elected official in the state and the first Hispanic, the only Puerto Rican in the state to get elected, and the first LGBT from the city, in a very Republican city where they've maybe seen tops in 40 years, maybe 10 Democrats get elected. So that's kind of how it started for me here in New Hampshire and how I got involved. And actually, as a matter of fact, I have a picture that I treasure that I want to show you guys my first night elected.
Hello.
Wow.
So,
Hands up.
Name drop.
Hey, let's get Damaris Vega in this conversation, aka Lady D. Damaris, I know you're very, first of all, what we try to do here on Founded Translation is not only provide people information, because what I tell people is if our folks have the correct information, they'll do the right thing for themselves. So we try to give it to you for real. But the second thing is we try to inspire people. And Damaris, I know you're very inspired by this young man's story and what he is. I know how he's taken it to the next level from that incredible first step. I know it's something you wanted to explore with Carlos on Founded Translation.
Ray, you know what you're doing because you're speaking right to my heart, my passion and the purpose really behind all the work that I do. Absolutely, Carlos, you're a perfect model of exactly why I created the platforms that I created. And I'm so proud to have you as a Puerto Rican brother. And I wish you so much success. I'm so happy to engage with you today. So obviously we know state from state what, the political parties struggle with and what the pros and cons are and the battles. But I'll have to tell you, New Hampshire is not one that I'm too aware of. So I wanted to pick your brain about what your challenges have been. I know the challenges between being such a minority as far as like the party goes in that state. But what would you say are like your top, 3 like passionately driven topics that you're trying to really make an impact with?
Well, I have to start off by saying that it's people like you guys that inspire me. I wouldn't have feel empowered if I didn't know about the history of Puerto Rico and the many Puerto Ricans that have gone from climbing in the Statue of Liberty and putting our flag to sometimes going to Washington, D.C. and doing things that are a little crazy.
We're a little loud.
Yeah, hey, we're all about persistence, right? So to me, it's all about following our culture and our heritage. But I do want to give credit to the state of New Hampshire. People give New Hampshire a lot of crap because, it's mostly white, 95% white. There is 13,000 Puerto Ricans that live here in the state. I found out yesterday from Power for Puerto Rico organization, which is a reassuring thing for the future of New Hampshire that is going to become more and more minority. But the state has empowered people like myself. And when I say the state, people in the state, they've been very welcoming. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the generosity of so many people to help me get through school, teachers that just heard my story and were so compelled. So I think that tells something about New Hampshire in itself, that are willing to welcome immigrants like ourselves. And of course, the party, since me fighting for a voice, has been very great about giving me positions and platforms so that I can continue to advocate for us, such as I recently got into the Affirmative Action Committee, which decides the type of delegates that we elect for the state to go to the national convention, which is super important because that means that now we are guaranteeing minorities to be able to go to the convention and speak up about the issues that matter to us. And not only that, but also to represent a state that is mostly white. So I think that's super important. But things that I feel passionate about is about making sure and ensuring. One of the biggest things that drove me this election was to highlight this number. 11% of Latinos in the United States suffer hunger. That means that they have one or less complete meals a day, which is something that troubles me to really wrap my mind around. I know what hunger looks like, and if you grew up in poor parts of Puerto Rico, you probably do too. But, we helped each other as neighbors, and we try to get by. Here in the United States, the richest nation on earth, this shouldn't be happening, especially not to kids. So to me, that was something, when I found out those numbers, it was something that really troubled me. And so I decided to become an AmeriCorps to serve and find people in my community that were struggling with that and give them resources such as food and other things that we can find for them. So they didn't, a lot of times people that are vulnerable feel like they have to beg to get something. So this program was designed to find them and not having them to beg, but instead we're like, here you go, take it. So it was us approaching them, which is a huge cultural change that we need to do here in our country. So that was something that really drives me. I think ending hunger should be our number one goal as a nation, and is the reason why I engage so many candidates, because they have a power that they sometimes don't realize, that when they run for president, they might not have a big chance of becoming president, but their voice and the attention they're getting is something amazing, which it was another thing that did for our city. For the first time in our history here, our city became part of the platform and the conversation. The other issue that drove me, it was to highlight the amount of discrimination that happens not only in the LGBTQ community in general as a whole here in America, but also within the Hispanic community. Growing up, there's no shame in admitting that our community, or anything wrong with it, but our community is, when you come here to America, we're really helped a lot by religious organization, which are great, and they really help us advance in our communities. But at the same time, the LGBTQ community within the Latino community gets affected because a lot of the times they're not accepted. So that was something else that I really wanted to highlight. It's something that we needed to change, that if we're going to work together, we also need to include our LGBTQ brothers and sisters, because we're all affected by injustice as a whole. And unity is important for me, and it's something that I keep driving even after our primary here that was very intense. I want to drive home that the only way we win and we beat people like Donald Trump in politics that has divided our nation, and in many ways it has created injustice for us Latinos here in America, and of course the devastating effects that it has had in Puerto Rico, is if we unite. So I keep driving this message home that we need to include everybody in the conversation. And of course, the largest suicide rates, that's the other conversation that drives me. Here in New Hampshire, it's pretty high, but also across the nation. Suicide rates are incredibly high nowadays, and it's something that I want to continue to raise awareness that, we shouldn't be losing lives because of those kind of things that are happening in their lives, like poverty, hunger, or negative effects of mental illnesses. So to me, it's something that I want to create awareness. And I'm not only doing it like on social media where I have a big following, or in my community. I've also been doing it behind the stage by talking to congressmen and women that are in Congress representing us, to also highlight the importance. So in many ways, using our Puerto Rican power and persistence to make sure that they understand that. And the other thing that we need to realize as Puerto Ricans is there's almost 7 million of us here in the United States. Like, that is a huge, phenomenal number. 13,000 alone in New Hampshire. The population is 1 million. 13,000, it's a lot in a state like New Hampshire for minorities. So that means we're constantly changing the culture, the food, the music. And I mean, let's face it, our artists tend to be the best. So we should use our culture to continue to emphasize.
If YouTube views is any indication of that, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Grammys and, Super Bowl performances.
Yeah. Been rocking it.
You're right about that. You're right about that, brother.
So we need to use everything we have going for us to change the conversation. And finally, after 2016, where I stayed pretty quiet, I did run for delegate and I was very involved. I decided after Hurricane Maria, I don't know if you guys have know this, but I lost an uncle during the hurricane that committed suicide because the lack of resources in the island. He was fed up of seeing his daughter and wife starving after the hurricane, that he took his own life. And thank you. So I'm using this opportunity and any opportunity that I can to highlight things like this. This is the devastation of when Puerto Ricans don't get involved, what happens. And for many times, the motto here in America is Puerto Ricans move to the United States and they stop getting involved. So I wanted to hopefully spark this little fire that hopefully Puerto Ricans will see, well, we used to think our vote didn't matter, but look at this guy. He's like barely 30 years old in New Hampshire, in the whitest state in the union. Maybe Alaska is whiter. And he's making a difference and people are empowering him. They're giving him the opportunity to continue to be an activist and stand up for the state and for his people. So that's what I'm hoping all of this causes. I want to highlight what happened in Puerto Rico. Over 3,000 Puerto Ricans died during that hurricane. And it was mostly because of the lack of responsibility our country took and our leadership here. So yes, we live here, but we have to take ownership of our country and we have to stand up. Our founding fathers in Puerto Rico fought really hard to make sure that we have granted citizenship at birth. And it's time that we stop taking it for granted. And in many ways, I envy our Cuban brothers and sisters in Florida because they understand that coming whatever way they get here to the United States and getting granted citizenship back before the Obama times, it was a sacrifice. And so I think for many years, Puerto Ricans stopped understanding the sacrifice, during El Grito de Lares and the Ponce massacre that, so many innocent people died so that we can have citizenship. So I'm hoping to be an enigma in this case. I am young and a lot of times young people forget about our history. So I'm hoping that I show young people that we can embrace our history while at the same time taking control of our future. And while at the same time, hopefully I change a couple of hearts and minds about who we are. And of course, highlighting the fact that we are U.S. citizens.
I tell you what, Carlos, first of all, whenever you run for governor, let me know because we're all going to go up there to help you. Because that was such an inspiring, I'm going to, and we just don't have the time normally, but I'm going to make sure that I'm serious, that we transcribe this episode. Because not only people will be able to see it and listen to it, of course, on YouTube and podcast, but I want to have that, what you just said in written form, that needs to be your first book, Carlos, because there's so much there. I mean, we could do a whole series of there's so many inspirational comments, not only our personal responsibilities, Puerto Ricans, to make a difference, not only for the diaspora, but the whole country, and also, of course, our homeland of Puerto Rico, but also the power we have in ourselves. I mean, look, you had every excuse not to get involved and not to do this, right? Person of color in New Hampshire. I'm young. I'm transitioning and dealing with my, coming out and those challenges. And you know what? You believed in yourself and you wanted to give to other people. So it's so inspiring. But I wanted to ask you, Carlos, because again, you broke down all kinds of things. The one thing, Damaris, I want to say is that on a side note, when you're a leader that is really talking about what really people care about, you get a lot of head nods. And I know everyone watching on social media is like, he knows what he's talking about. You're hitting the issues that really impact people in a very authentic way. So, Carlos, you did all these things. There's a lot of great activists out there, but let's keep it real. Very few of us have these skills that you have to have inserted yourself into the Democratic presidential primary process. Damaris, do you know this man had most of all the 20-something candidates, including all the major candidates, go to his house because that's how valuable his influence was in the New Hampshire process. So, Carlos, share with us, what's your secret sauce? How did you position yourself to be one of the key influencers in the New Hampshire primary? And just share that process with us and what this experience has been like, building relationships with Bernie Sanders, Andrew Yang, Elizabeth Warren, all the names.
They're the blueprint.
He can text Joe Biden right now if he wanted. So share with us, Carlos, that step of your journey, my friend.
Well, first of all, I hope this encourages people to move to, especially progressives, to move to our state. So step number one, you move to Laconia, New Hampshire. Number two, I was very vocal. I'm very like any typical Puerto Rican, and add to it the fact that I'm a Leo. We have pride in ourselves and in our experience, and we also are very persistent. And sometimes we get mad if we don't get our way. So I think that helped a little bit. But of course, having been run for office here and learning the ropes from the locals and what the culture is like, and learning how to host a house party, and pretty much getting to know the staff that really make these things happen was very key, having a relationship with them. I do have to add, it's not always been very easy and colorful for me. In 2018, I ran for office, and after having won before, I lost my election in 2018. And that was devastating because I had lost by like only 100 votes. So that means that there could have been 100 more people that I could have gotten out to vote, but we won't go there. So I used my frustration and anger that I had about not getting my message far enough. And instead of getting mad and disappointed and saying, you know what, I'm not going to get involved, I'm done with this, I said, I took a month vacation here at home with my family, getting close to them. And then I said, you know what, I'm going to continue to drive the message home. So I ran for chairman of the Laconia Democratic Party. And I had a lot of broad support. About 200 people out of over 100 showed up and basically voted for me. And then after that, I decided to use the position that I had here to drive the conversation home. So I reached out to candidates like Andrew Yang. Sorry, one of my headphones fell off. So I basically, let me grab my headphones. Sorry. So I approached Andrew Yang and talked to him about my city and the issues that we're facing here, such as the fact that over 146 people had died in 1 year from the drug opioid crisis, one of them being my brother-in-law. So I talked about that experience and my journey here from Puerto Rico. And the candidates were very interested in what was happening in Puerto Rico, and some of them not knowing anything. They used that opportunity to get close to me and learn about Puerto Rico and the issues, because they realize that Puerto Rico has a lot of voters that get to vote in the primary, and Puerto Rico actually has a huge amount of delegates, more than New Hampshire and Iowa combined, and half of the Super Tuesday states. So we talked about that. I advised them what to do here in New Hampshire, some of them. So in return, they decided they were going to come here to Laconia and I would host a house party. So that was Andrew Yang, Tulsi Gabbard. And then after that, the candidates basically got a word of what I was doing and my story, and they were pretty inspired. So they decided to, one by one, come here to the house and have house parties hosted by me, which in some cases, they were so crowded that we actually had to take the house parties outside. And like, for example, with Senator Bernie Sanders, luckily the weather was nice. We had over 700 people show up to my house. And of course, I mean, you can't fit 700 people inside of anybody's house. So especially here in New Hampshire with like old colonial homes.
Puerto Ricans do try, though. We do try. If you include the backyard.
So we decided to take it to the front yard, and 700 people stood out there. And then, like, for example, we had Pete Buttigieg, where we had like 900 people showed up. And of course, I found myself like becoming a very popular house to come to and see the candidates. And especially because they got to meet, a lot of them would say, I was so inspired by you and I really wanted to take a selfie with you. So I think they just wanted to do both, a presidential selfie and a Carlos selfie. And it was really inspiring for me because a lot of the times I got to hear from people and their story. which I get to relate to the candidates. And of course, in my political journey, I get to speak about them and raise their voice, which is the whole reason why I got involved in politics. I always wanted to be a lawyer. I never really wanted to be a politician. I got involved in politics because I knew that was the best way to make a quick change in our state. And of course, New Hampshire being such a political state, it offered a very good opportunity for me to be able to stay involved and make a difference.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I hope there's a lot of people that, probably think to want to become some type of political leader, community leader, and are listening to the ways that you were able to navigate yourself so eloquently to get a space at the table, which is always so hard for us to be able to get. So I really hope that that's feeding enough people to keep going in their journey as well. I wanted to ask you, though.
Can I add real quick to something that you just mentioned? I want to share this quote real quick because you touched on something that is very important to me. I wanted to run because I wanted to break a ceiling so to make sure that other Latinos can run. And it was not until I met Governor DeBell Patrick from Massachusetts, who ran for president, who came here and shared a quote with me that was super important. He was the first Black governor of Massachusetts and the second in our whole country, which it was like, and it was not long ago. So it's like, we're like, really? You're the second? So that was something that impacted me. But he had a quote that he shared with me that I want to share with everybody here that I hope inspires you to get involved. It is only great to be number one, to be the first one to get elected. If there's a second, a third, a fourth, and a fifth. And when he shared that quote with me, it really hit home because it is so true. What you do as an activist, as a mother, as a father, as whatever title you hold, it's only important if it has ripple effects into the future. So I want to share that quote because you touch on, hopefully inspiring other people and being, the first one and the second. So hopefully that quote sticks with people like it stuck with me. He was not my presidential candidate, but again, this shows how every presidential candidate has a influence on all of us with what they say. Sorry, go ahead.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And that's hopefully what we're doing all here is just trying to pass on the baton. And like such as yourself, someone so young, hopefully people within your generation will be able to feel inspired. Thank you for the quote. I love quotes. What would you say, Carlos, you've learned during your advocacy, like about yourself and during the Democratic primary process? What has that been like?
Well, superficially, it's changed a lot. Like, I used to be that Puerto Rican that was very shy. Like, believe it or not, I was overweight in my early teens, and I was very uncomfortable with myself. And of course, there's a lot of stigma on what you look like. And, right now I didn't shave. So I'm very comfortable in my skin after getting involved. And I think politics does that to you. It takes you out of your comfort zone. For some politicians, it makes them more superficial. For me, it really learned to accept myself for who I am and love myself. So I think that's something important to acknowledge that, becoming an activist, you really, truly learn to care about yourself and just be yourself. It really makes you feel that way. At least for me, that's what happened. So that's superficially what it did for me. Sorry, and repeat the question again, because there was something else you said that I wanted to touch on.
About the Democratic primary process, like how I'm sure you probably discovered either some strengths or some things you're learning along the way. Yeah.
Politics, it's tough to make friends sometimes because when you become so active, it's almost a little bit competitive. So that's the downside of things that I realized in politics is sometimes you make enemies, unfortunately, for doing the right thing. People get competitive. So you have to make sure that your thoughts and your ideas are well expressed so that people understand what you're trying to accomplish. A perfect example was I have a lot of moderate friends that don't necessarily agree with how we should address progressive, for example, poverty, how to address poverty. And I believe in a very extreme way. I call it extreme because to them it is, as Bernie Sanders would say, a radical idea, which is, we have to tackle poverty in this country. When we do that, we lift everybody up. So, for example, making housing having a home, a human right. It's so crazy that every species on Earth having a home is so vital, and it's part of their nature, and it's part of who they are and part of their lives. And for us, it's a struggle. It's like you have to pay for it. You have to do this and that. And I do believe that, obviously, in a capitalist way of doing things for housing, but at the same time, I believe that helping poor people, making sure that they have a home, and that's super important to me. So making home a right, I think it's something, if I'm not expressing myself well, it's basically, that's something that we need to care about and focus on. So in politics, for me in the democratic system, that's been something hard to get through, because a lot of people are so used to the way we do business as usual here in America. And number two, of course, the many subdivisions you have within a Big Ten party, like, for example, for women, I'm such a feminist. I grew up with 7 aunts that are they're just I went to all of their weddings. I was their best man to all of them. I danced with all of them. And there was such an influence on me that, and of course, my mother, who's like an idol, that basically I find it very difficult when I find men in politics that want to tell women what to do. And earlier, you guys were talking about independent women, and I am raising a daughter. She's 4 years old. Her name is Sophia Mayra. And now I have a newborn baby boy that is 4 weeks old. And
congratulations.
Thank you. And I want to raise them, the boy, knowing how to respect women and making sure that they can make their own decisions. And Sophia, I want to raise her to learn how to kick every guy's butt, to make sure that she can be a strong woman, independent. So in politics, I sometimes find it really hard to keep my mouth shut when I see men in politics basically just telling women what to do. So basically, there's my partner just swinging by, and my daughter. So basically, I find it really hard in politics to basically when women are just discriminated against. And so to me, that's some of the toughest challenges I find. I honestly, as a Puerto Rican, I almost feel like people in politics have a little bit of more respect for you, because we have a reputation of you're either with us or against us type of attitude. So I think people realize that by now, and so they try to work with us. So I haven't had many issues when it comes to being Puerto Rican. I've had people in the past say, "How did you get to our country?" So I've had to educate them. I don't take that offensively.
No.
In many ways, is in part fault to our own culture and our own island, that we've been so comfortable in our own skin and just not really advocating for ourselves. And of course, our political leaders in the island that have struggled to make advocacy for us here in mainland. So I just basically, I don't get offended on that.
Carlos, let me jump in here because we really appreciate the conversation. We just we're getting a little short on time. I want to make sure we have a moment to get into this love thing. But two things, Carlos, is that quickly you did end up endorsing Senator Bernie Sanders, who's obviously the front runner at this point. So very quickly, what should people be looking at as it relates to the rest of the Democratic primary process from your analytical perspective? And how does the word love impact this whole conversation? We're hours away from Valentine's Day. We're obviously such a loving community, and we're all looking forward to this weekend on some level. But I want to, why don't you help us not only wrap up the political conversation, but kick off our conversation about love. So your quick political prognostication about the next steps, and a word about love from Carlos Cardona.
Sounds good. So real quick on Bernie Sanders, poverty is something that we have less opportunities here in America sometimes. So when he started talking to me about Puerto Rico, not just from a status standpoint, I'm really sick and tired of politicians talking about Puerto Rico and pandering about the status. Puerto Rico is more than just a status. Puerto Rico is a group of people, a heritage that have been struggling to really fight for themselves and get a platform to speak up and take control of their own destiny. So to me, when Bernie Sanders started talking to Puerto Rico about beyond the status quo question in Puerto Rico, started talking about the issues that face the violence, the drugs, the poverty, the schools, of course, climate change, it really impacted me. And I think people should look into him. As a matter of fact, I saw earlier somebody saying, I have a question for Carlos. If you have a question for me, I'd love to continue this conversation. I'm open to criticism and compliments. You can go to NH Cardona 603 on Twitter. I'm always on there having a discussion about all this. To me, he had the most impact. I got to host all 30 candidates. I got very close to all of them and got to advise about 8 of them. And to me, like, he had the most impact in my life. And of course, raising awareness. It is important that candidates that lift up Puerto Ricans like ourselves should get more credit than they get. And then in regards to love is difficult. But of course, us Puerto Ricans, we're very romantic. So my advice to all the Puerto Ricans out there, put some good music tomorrow, some chocolate covered strawberries, some roses. And really try. You know, Valentine's is not about how much you get, it's about trying. For me, and of course, the other thing I'll add is LGBT. We need to realize that love comes in all shapes and sizes and all colors. And I mean, life has changed my view very much from Puerto Rico to here. My journey to meeting the guy that I'm with today, 14 years later. Don't ask me what the trick is, you know, and the other thing is love is about keeping it alive. There's times that you think love is about to die, but it's your job. It's both of your jobs to really keep it going and fighting for it. The butterflies at the beginning, they go away after a couple of months, and that's when real love begins. When you learn to love somebody for who they are, for the bad things, the good things, and you just learn to get along together and fight for each other, putting each other first. And that's what I think love is about. And I can't wait until tomorrow.
Carlos Cardona, Democratic activist, New Hampshire. Carlos, yo lo bendiga, brother. You're a special person.
Gracias, igual.
And we're going to keep supporting you, keep us involved. Lady D, I think he needs his own television show. This is a young fella, isn't he?
I would tune in. I want more conversation with you for sure, Carlos. You got
to get down here. We need to do a tour of Carlos, go to Philadelphia, go down to Vineland, New Jersey, get up to Allentown.
I have family in Reading, so I'm welcome to join you guys.
Come on down.
We'll do a Carlos.
My grandmother lives there.
In this area. Oh, well, if you're ever in this area, please, we'll definitely we'll roll out the red carpet for you. Carlos Cardona, New Hampshire Democratic activist and political operative. Carlos, keep up the good work. New Hampshire is a swing state, so you still got some work to do in the fall. And you know, just keep us posted. We're going to stay in touch and support you in all of your endeavors. Mil gracias, Carlito.
Gracias, Loto.
Adios.
And that was Carlos Cardona. What an inspiration that brother was. I mean,
my God.
Where did we begin, Damaris?
My gosh.
I mean, you left me speechless, and that's hard to do.
I know. I was just doing a segment earlier today, about Latino political candidates. And this guy just like completely blew me away. That was exactly what we are trying to see more of.
He's a bad brother. Christina Vega has been throwing up hands this whole time. Yes, he's very well spoken, knowledgeable. She's given a lot of great comments. Thank you, Christina, as always. Christina Vega is like my little sister. She is the founder of the Love Shouldn't Hurt campaign, which is supporting Latina domestic violence survivors. And she's got a gala coming up February 22nd, which I believe is sold out. I can't even get a ticket to this thing. And she's my little sister. But she's doing some great big things. She's going to come back on the show very soon. She's doing public appearances in Hawaii. She's going to Hawaii to go spread her message of empowerment for domestic violence survivors.
I gotta follow her.
Whatever. Yeah, we need to get her up to Allentown to be on your show. She's the bomb. That's all I gotta say. She's
Hello, Miss Vega. That's a good name, you know.
Yeah, no, that's the truth. So yeah, she's doing her thing. So we want to support Christina. Love, my friend, Damaris, Lady D. Where do we begin? In 2020, it seems more complicated than ever. Talk to me, girl.
You know what? Love used to be.
You acting like you old.
Let me tell you. I know you see the canas in there. The lighting is a little off, but
what I tell people is that we're still youngish.
That's right. We're still youngish. We're hip to it all. But I do think a little old school when it comes down to love. And I was just thinking when you brought up the conversation about love in 2020, I'm like, love used to be a thing between two people, very intimate. You shared things and moments that just stayed right there between the two of you. And you grew this sense of excitement to get home to one another and share things with each other. And I feel like the root of the change that we're seeing in love, it has to do with that. We've lost that. People, I think, now share too much of their relationship.
Are you talking about social media?
Come on now. Like
okay,
with the world, you're basically, you know, and then you're competing with the world. Like we always talk about doing, you know, how like friends that have couples always compare each other. You know, what did he do for her for Valentine's Day? What did she do for him for Valentine's Day? We're using Valentine's as an example because it's coming up.
All right, I see what you're saying. You're saying some people are using it to compare their relationships to other people.
Human nature is going to put you in that position when you're looking at so many other examples of forms of love and what you think is a relationship. You're going to start comparing yourself and you're going to wonder. So I feel like you're not focused on just you two, which what I think is should be the main focus in order for love to be successful in between two people, you know?
And do you think that with social media, that because it works both ways, because not only do people kind of it's like TMI, it's like a form for TMI, but it also is a form for people to interject themselves in a relationship.
Absolutely. Like, you know, you have your friends, your friends that you decide to spend time around and who you think, you know, could be healthy for your relationship and you share moments with, or you have your coworkers, you spend your 8 hours there, you talk about your relationship, you leave, you go back home, you're good, you're protected. Whatever people's opinions are of you or what have you, you don't have to worry about, you know, and you don't have to bring that into your home. But you're on social media. I think that you do expose yourself to that, and you allow it to infiltrate in a big way, in a big, huge way. Statistically they say, let me tell you something, Ray. Statistically, they say that the ones that post the most pictures, okay, about their relationship and what they're doing and where they're going and how much he loves me and how much she loves me are the ones that are actually going through the most struggle.
And on the flip side, if your partner's not on any social media, that's a flag too for a lot of people. Like, why are they trying to hide? You know what I'm saying?
Be. Yeah, absolutely. Like, why aren't you in a relationship on social media? You know,
why don't you post about your relationship? Because some people, then it flips out, because some people generally just like to keep their personal life private. I think me and my wife are kind of that way. Most of my social media stuff is about the fam, like my kids, my sons. You know, but like she's, you know, we're tend to about our personal social media. Now we tend to be just kind of private about our personal lives. So, but there's some people that generally don't like to put their stuff out there. But then other people take that the wrong way. Like, oh, if they're not posting, there must be something wrong. So it works. The dynamics of how people react to what you put out and what you don't put out. And then if you put too much out, you get criticized for that too.
Yeah. Do you see the conversation we're even getting into, you and I? Like,
I know.
Why does all of that even matter?
Exactly.
It's already so hard.
I know.
To deal with everyday challenges as an individual and taking under consideration what your partner is going through, that you're including all of these other elements that are not healthy.
No, and the thing is, Carlos brought it up. He was like, it's work. You know, because the things that, you know, romance and, you know, the things that we think are important as it relates to love when we're teenagers and young adults, the priorities change a lot as you mature. My wife told me the other day, she goes, you know, one of the sexiest things you do every day is because she goes to work early. She's at work by like 7:00 in the morning. So I take the kids to school. She goes, the sexiest thing you do every day is take the, I don't have to worry about my kids getting to school. Because you got them.
Yes,
you know what I mean? And it's like, but it's like, that's the important stuff, is that reliability. You know what I mean? Like thinking about loyalty. Like I think about my wife, like my wife is like she could be on a yacht with Chris Brown and I would be like, I trust her. You know what I mean? Because she's got that loyalty gene. You know what I'm saying? Like, and those are the things that, you know, while we all have our things, our relationships, like when you have the foundation about those kind of things, like you're on the same plane spiritually, you're on the plane of where you're trying to go, then the other stuff, a lot of the other stuff you can figure out. So talk to me, Damaris. Give me, I know you're feeling that conversation.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Priorities is light. That's the real deal.
Yeah, you're mentioning loyalty, right? I think loyalty is something that I think you have to prove loyalty when you're first growing and building, right? What I like to call building. And in order to do that, of course, you have to focus on each other, right? You have to pay attention. You have to listen carefully. You have to catch on to things. You have to be attentive, ask questions, discover this moment of discovery. And I think you should be constantly in a moment of discovery with one another. You know, it brings me to mind with what comes to my mind is the cell phone these days. Like if you are going back and forth with your partner, right, all day long, and you're telling them, guess what happened to me today? And you're talking about what you ate for lunch, and you're talking about what your coworker
Are you saying couple
on your nerves.
Marriage? You're not talking about couples gossip.
Couple gossip. You know what that is.
No, and the thing is, the men are worse. I'll keep it real, especially with our wives. Oh my God, it's terrible.
Yes, they are worse. I'm gonna say that. I'm gonna be the first ones to say that. I know
my college told me you're like shocking, right? Shocking.
Yeah, don't tell. Yeah, right.
Never gossip, so.
But you know, I feel like that takes away from the excitement of like getting home and then having something to talk about when you guys are together. Even if you don't live together and you're in that state of building and getting to know each other and discovery, when you have like dinner that night, you know, and you're looking forward to sitting down for dinner with him or her, you know, catching up throughout the day because you haven't seen each other all day or you haven't spoken to each other all day. I feel like that takes away from the building that you have to do with one another, and loyalty comes right along with that. That becomes your best friend. You're excited. You can't wait to see him and tell him all about your day, you know? Yeah.
Damaris, we literally could do 2 more hours on this subject, but let me ask you this question, my friend. And this is going to be a teaser because you got to come back. We're going to have to do a whole other segment about this conversation. And Christina Vega is going to have to be on this one because she's furiously commenting on social media here. These are some great comments. Thank you, Christina, as always, for your commentary. Is that I want you to start the conversation and we'll get into it the next show.
Okay.
Is that as it's interesting because how relationships are evolving as women are moving up in the career world. That's changing the flipping all kind of scripts, my friend.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
I'm teeing you up. Please share.
Like many things in life, I feel like it's all about balance. You said to me something like, do you have to choose? You know, one or the other. I don't think it's that. I think that it's about a balance. And as the career woman, you have to be mindful of how you're moving while you're trying to pursue your career, you know? As a career woman myself, I'll use myself as a prime example. I'm here talking about love. I've been single for a long time. But
that love comes in a lot of forms too, though.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Because my wife, there's another thing, but she's like, we always do an event with us, you know, like Valentine's Day, and then we always go out with my sons. Because she's like, that's our Valentine's right there. That's the biggest expression of our love. So we always carve out some time to be a part of that. So it goes in a lot of directions.
Yeah. Listen, I've been in a love relationship with my children as a single mother for many years. And I'm 40 now, but I just got through completing finally college and getting into my career fully. So now I feel like I'm in love with my career. But I'm getting older and I have to call myself out on, you know what, Dee, you're not even taking time out to like meet someone, you know, you're not even open to the invites, you know, that you are getting when you're going out and you're networking and you're meeting people that are great, like, you know, good potentials, you know, is what me and my girlfriends would call them, you know? So you have to be real about yourself, even though as a career woman, you're like, you know what? I don't need a relationship. I don't need to be in a relationship. I've got my career and I'm focused. The fact of the matter is that we all want to be loved. When you're going through your busy day, you want somebody to check up on you. Did you eat today? After your busy day, can we go out for cocktails? So you have to find that balance, because after you're done and you're never done, I feel like, in your career, because you always want to kind of like up the ante and do better things and more things. But then once you make all the money that you could possibly make in your career, you understand what I'm saying? Like, if you don't have anybody to enjoy that with, and you haven't invested time in yourself,
things in perspective. That's right.
What is it? What was it all for?
Let me ask you a question, Damaris, since you're a broadcaster. Do you feel that as your broadcasting brand grows and you become more visible and popular there in the Lehigh Valley, that's impacted how some men approach you? Like, is it like a turn on, for lack of a better phrase? Is it like a turn on for some? Does it intimidate others? Because it's like, wow, she's on TV, she's on radio, she's known, because I know some of the most successful women that got it going on, sometimes have the hardest time connecting with a relationship, because a lot of men, whether they admit it or not, intimidated, especially a woman in the public eye like you.
You know what? It's a fact. And I think that the type of energy that I have just creates that like space of comfortability where people are very honest with me, including men. And I've been told that, I've been told it's very intimidating. As a producer, I kind of am attached to my job 24/7. I'm trying to reach people that are busy. I'm trying to get through gatekeepers. If I get a phone call back that I've been trying to get for the past 2 weeks for a project, I'm going to pick up that phone call, and the man that gets involved with me has to understand that that's not a reflection of the level of interest that I have or do not have for him, or that it's not going to affect our building, right? Our growth, that I, of course, that comes with reassurance. You have to give them reassurance as well. So again, calling yourself out as a career woman, what you're doing. But as long as you are checking all of those boxes and you know that you're giving your best foot forward, then stick to your standard. And even if the man feels intimidated, then that's probably not the man for you. I feel powerful, and I want to be a part of a power couple. And I feel like that's how I'm navigating through that. I used to reflect on myself, but now I'm like, you know what? No, I pick up a call if I'm trying to get involved with a man. If I'm there, obviously I'm struggling with making myself available right now. But if I am in that space with a man, then I know I'm doing all that I can do for us to grow. And if they're still feeling intimidated, if they can't handle me having a conversation with you, Ray, if me and you are talking before we, go on air.
Oh my God, jealousy is the worst. I mean, my wife is so good. She, she's so secure with that part. Oh my God, I hate to see those couples. I've seen people have to quit jobs, turn down promotions, just because their partner was so insecure. Oh, you got to work with other women, or you got to be away from the home more. It's ridiculous. The Lady D, we're going to continue this conversation another time because they're kicking me out of the studio here. But I always appreciate being in the studio here at WPPMOP 106.5 FM. Maria Vanessa Graber. Shout out to Vanessa. She just celebrated the 100th episode of her show, the People Power Hour, where she talks to community activists in the Philadelphia area, and she's the executive producer. She's the director of the radio station here, so we got to connect. We need to have a Latino broadcaster huddle one of these days soon. So, Lady D, let people know where they can find your. Let them know again about your radio show and anything else you wanted to share on Found in Translation.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, my Latino people, PBS 39 has the very first Spanish speaking and focused show called Es Tiempo. I have the honor of producing, so I want you guys to please visit our website, PBS 39. Es Tiempo is the name of the show, and you can catch all of our 4 seasons. We're on our 4th season. There's great stories there. Also, my Instagram is Damaris247 because I keep it real. I try to, at least. And my Facebook is Damaris Vega, and on there you'll be able to connect to what I do on radio, both Spanish and English. I'm always trying to put out there the videos. Much
love to my people in Lehigh Valley. We need to find a venue where we could do the show live in the Lehigh Valley. I want to kind of do to the Hood Tour. We got to get out there in the community in 2020. For my political nerds, obviously Carlos was fantastic. Wanted to get my analysis of what's going on. I'll probably do some IGs next few days to kind of catch people up. But the bottom line is this. On the presidential side, nothing has changed. I think this is going to be Bernie versus Bloomberg, Damaris. We're all going to be on Bloomberg's payroll here by the end of it. I'm telling you, he is throwing around money like it's the amounts and the amount of people he's hiring at this pace is unbelievable. But I tell people, get that money. I'm concerned about what could be the long-term ramifications of that. And the Nevada caucus, where the Latino vote's going to be a big part of the conversation next week or news. I'm going to have y'all covered next week 24/7. I'm just going to leave it at that. Lady D, Damaris, Vega, thank you so much for joining Final Translation. Promise me you'll come back. And I hope you enjoyed your first time on the show.
You've got my word. Anytime you invite me, I will be here. I want to thank everybody that was in tune today and conversating with us. And I look forward to being here again. Thank you so much, Ray. I certainly do appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much, and I will reciprocate. Appreciate you, fam, for checking out Found in Translation. Subscribe, download the podcast, review it, share it with your friends, and, of course, enjoy the show either as a live show on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, or on WPPMLP Radio in Philadelphia. Thank you, dear. Talk to you soon.
Bye, Ray.